All right. Bulavinaka. I'm Bindiya, and I specialize in freshwater science. More specifically, I'm very passionate about freshwater wetlands. My talk is very simple, aligning biocultural values to scientific species towards an ethnic biodiversity framework, which is actually applicable to Pacific Island context. I'm an exiting PhD student, and in Fiji, I'm from the Garden Island of Fiji, which is the third largest island. And we have dateline meridian crossing us. More specifically, in an indigenous way, I'd say I'm from Tikinavuna, which is Vuna district, Korongarawalu. That is my village, Garwalu, in Taveuni. So at island level, my mountain is Mount Ulingalau, which is the second highest peak of Fiji. My river is Korelevu Creek, which is the major river in the Boma National Heritage of Fiji. My flower is Tangimodea flower, which is an endemic to the island and also a national endemic. So my presentation will be on ethnobiodiversity concept as defined by Pacific Island researchers, the types of Fijian freshwater wetlands, our traditional important wetlands, so our indigenous wetlands, which hold socio-ecological values, seeing freshwater wetlands as biological markets in Pacific Islands, and why I study Odonata for Fijian Freshwater Wetland Index. So Odonata is basically dragonflies and damselflies, and then the ethnobiodiversity significance of the dragonflies and damselflies of Fiji, then streamlining it to its application in my PhD research. I'm submitting my dissertation this week. So the wetland index has already been completed, but unfortunately I cannot present it until I publish it here, but I'll definitely speak about it. Then the utilization of the index, which is actually very Pacificanized, and it holds biocultural conscience for Pacific Islands. Then the reach to reef connectivity, where we say that you cannot manage marine without headwater systems. So you need to basically, to take care of the marine areas, you need to take care of where the river starts from. And then taking Fijian index and the science plus the biocultural value into a regional biomonetary context possibilities, which is very highly applicable for Pacific Island systems. So my first slide basically on the definition of biodiversity in Pacific. So the thing is, every time I've traveled internationally and presented in multiple global conferences, I've always said that the moment you enter the Pacific Ring, the definition of biodiversity only holds its truest conscience in the terms of ethnobiodiversity. When you define biodiversity as ethnobiodiversity, then it becomes inseparable to us in Pacific Island systems. Professor Randy Thaman defines ethnobiodiversity as the knowledge, use, beliefs, conservation practices, and language a society or culture has for their islands, ecosystem, species, taxa, and genetic diversity. Basically, for us people, we are inseparable from our terrestrial, freshwater, and marine ecosystem. And that's the value of biodiversity when you coin the word ethnobiodiversity. Then taking you to the wonders of the freshwater wetlands of Fiji. So we have our running systems as huge as Sovi Basin, which is an international key biodiversity area, as well as an important bird area. And it's Fiji's remotest reserve. Then we have only one freshwater Ramsar site, Upper Nava Conservation Area, which is in wetlands of international importance. We also have coastal bedrock systems in the Konimba and Vanuatu village of Vanuatu Island of Fiji. And then we have highly agriculturally impacted systems, which are our sugar canes. So in the picture below, you can see that our riparian is highly modified and our streams have become quite narrow, small, and bit of dirty water. And the most common site is our small mountain streams, which are our rural water supply, where communities dam the small systems just for their daily water supply. In the Fijian scenario, freshwater wetlands, they hold both scientific and biocultural value when it comes to species. So in the indigenous Itoke culture, every clan or Matangali has 3 totem species. So one would be a plant from terrestrial and that we'll call nomu cow, like your plant, one terrestrial animal, your manu, and then any aquatic species or aquatic animal, which will be nomu ika, so as in your fish. Now, if you look at the bigger picture, for Fijian archipelago, we have 5,000 matangalis, multiplied by 3 species of biocultural value. So 3 taxa, that's 15,000 species of biocultural value, just as totem species. Apart from the other native names and species that we use for agrobiodiversity and other things, just the totem itself holds 15,000 species of biocultural value, which is a huge proportion to ethnobiodiversity ranking. In the slide, I've given an example of the Leskau village in Naitasiri Highlands, and the freshwater Elangula mamarata is the aquatic animal. In Nabalsere village in Ra, the Silaniwai or the water corn is their plant. In Navavai village of Nakovandra, the endemic dragonfly, Procodyria irregularis, that is their terrestrial animal, so they are manumanu. Now moving on to traditional important wetlands of Fiji, or indigenous wetlands. Floating island system of the second largest island in Fiji is one of the low-lying system standing lakes of Fiji. It has a floating island mat in the middle, and it is the home to our endemic damselfly Pseudogram pacificum. Pseudogram pacificum is the only species in this genus in Fiji, and floating island is the largest standing habitat for this species. Moving on to a wetland of socio-ecological importance. So Kuta reed ponds. Kuta is basically our wetland plant. It's nativized now, introduced, but it's become a Pacific Island plant, Eulochris dulcis. This is very important for women in Maduata province of Fiji. They have their different art for each of their clans of how they weave this mat. So in the picture, you can see the women from Navakasombo village in Maduata province, and they're showcasing their finely woven mat. On the biocultural value side, Kuta reed ponds in Fiji, they are the largest standing habitat for our subspecies endemic dragonfly, Rhythemis felis dispa. This is the only subspecies endemic we've known from Fiji, and it is, we usually call it yellow-striped fluttera in Fiji. On the side to man-made wetlands, but which is also what we commonly call edible wetlands in Fiji, in Dranoni Karisi, or a watercress wetland. This is created by mostly highlanders in Namosi Highlands. So this is an example of a wetland created by Salindra villages from Namosi Islands. And this watercress can be nicely eaten as a salad with coconut milk. And then we move on to the largest standing natural lake in Fiji, which is from my home island, which is the home, this whole lake area is very, how to say, highland system, upland forest system which harbors the Tangimodia flower, Medellina waterhousey. So Lake Tangimodia is the largest standing habitat for Procodyria irregularis. And as part of my PhD, we also discovered a subspecies endemic, which we are naming as a subspecies endemic to this lake. So it will be Rhythemis regia and Drano meaning lake. So paper is underway by 2026. And then we combine all the different types of freshwater wetland and all the species of biocultural significance. So Fijian freshwater wetlands stand as biological markers, basically. And these are pictures from different parts of Fiji with plants and animals that is harvested by villagers from freshwater wetlands in Fiji. And of everything, you see in the middle, the major thing is the community water supply dam. This is where our essential ecosystem services are provided by the freshwater wetlands in Fiji. Now, considering that wetlands itself holds a socio-ecological importance in terms of species and essential ecosystem services, there are wetland indices or freshwater indices around even in Australia and New Zealand and Europe and other countries, and EPT is the most common one. So it's made up of mayflies, stoneflies, and caddisflies, Ephemeroptera, Plecoptera, and Trichoptera orders. In the Melanesia systems, we don't have the P, which is Plecoptera, the stoneflies. And therefore, that EPT index is not applicable for us. But also considering that very little or very almost in some cases, in some islands, there's almost zero knowledge on Ephemetra species, the mayflies and the caddisflies. And they are very tiny as well. In our island system, people are not ready yet to go into that depth because river science is a missing curriculum in the Pacific Island systems. So Melanesia doesn't have river science from its early childhood to university level. There is just 2 to 6 weeks of in freshwater and redbird course, and that's about it. And therefore, EPT is not applicable at this point in time in Melanesia for all these reasons. Now, what we have are bigger flying insects, which are actually highly national endemics, island endemics, and area endemics. And these are our damselflies. We do have endemic dragonflies, but damselflies are the ones that have highly speciose national endemic genera. And they are radiating across a small island system, so also speciation is happening. We continue to discover new species in Pacific Island systems. Fiji alone, with over 40 islands supporting freshwater habitats, we have been, just part of my 4 years of PhD research, we gave 8 new species for Fiji and a new endemic genera, which we dedicated to the Fijian sevens rugby, Nicola basis, where Nike stands for the goddess of victory and Kola for gold in Fiji. And one of my chapter 3 of my PhD is the first new species in the genus Nicola basis roseo-stricta, and it's found in Natewa Peninsula in Vanua level. So this is the beauty of damselflies, which are actually the most prominent taxa, or the umbrella taxa that actually speaks for the freshwater wetlands in Fiji. And these are some of the reasons that I chose to have the first freshwater wetland index for Fiji and use Odonata. You see the adults as very easily spotted flying insects, easy to sample, and they are in all types of freshwater wetlands. So the non-Fijian ones, what we call the generalist ones, are in mostly the human-made wetlands or disturbed areas. The Fijian endemics are found in intact or excellent water quality systems. And now we have almost 3 endemic genus, and all of them are very speciose. Nisobaesis is the most speciose endemic genus with now 30 species in Fiji. And they are highly associated. Nisobaesis, Melanisobaesis, and Nicolabaesis are highly associated with flowing systems with intact riparian system, well-vegetated streams with native forest. They are also sensitive to land use practices and habitat disturbances, and that goes for their babies that live in water too, the nymphs. So different species are found associated with different types of disturbance, and they're easy to spot and collect. And Nisobaesis and Melanisobaesis are also included in the Fiji Endangered and Protected Species Act. So it also holds high national significance when it comes to environmental impact assessment. So yeah, these are the reasons. Apart from biocultural value, this is the reason I chose to use Odonata to develop Fiji's first freshwater wetland index. And if I look at the national significance, or say ethnobiodiversity significance of Odonata in Fiji, we have this Itoke quote on that the biodiversity is the voice of the Vanua, or we commonly say the organism speaks for the Vanua. So Navai Kambula e Wakatakila ni Vanua. And when we use biocultural value species, they represent the different areas, and they represent the state or ecological status of different wetland systems. So given the fact that Odonata is culturally significant species, it's a totem species for example, in Rakiraki. It also has the name stages, and it has different names from different parts of Fiji. So even adults can be called Dedewai, Diriwai, helicopter, or even Riri in Tailevu province of Fiji, where the names can be called like a different name, Mama. So it could be same species, but the name would have a different name because it appears different to people. And then they are also, the guardians of the traditional significant wetlands of Fiji. And each province area or villages have their different native names for it. for different parts of Fiji. So that combines Odonata as scientifically correct as well as biophysic species, having both life cycle in aquatic as well as in terrestrial zone. So the adults can be flying around the riparian vegetations along the wetland system, while the babies should be breeding in water. So it, apart from it reflecting the water quality status, it also reflects the forest status around, or the vegetation status around these wetlands. So this was all these reasons that I chose Odonata to develop Fiji's wetland index. And my PhD research in a nutshell, in the 4 years, I covered 35 sites across 10 provinces in Fiji, combining data collection of physical, chemical, biological, and traditional attributes across ecological gradient in different types of freshwater wetlands, man-made and natural wetlands in Fiji. And I covered major and maritime islands of Fiji. I worked on describing Odonata species composition across ecological, anthropogenic, and spatial gradients. And my aim was to develop the first wetland index in the world that takes a biocultural value of a species into mathematical formula and simplify it to a level that practitioners in different parts of Fiji can use it, whether they are forest wardens, whether they are village headmen, our Nikoro, whether they are people from Committee Niwai, that is Water Committee, Committee Nishikumbullambula, Health Committee, or Yambula Committee, Environmental Committee. The formula should be easily applicable and simple and easy tool to use, as well as something that holds the indigenous itoke concept for organisms in Fiji. And those are my study sites across the Fijian archipelago. So 12 islands, 35 sites, from natural to man-made wetlands across Fiji. At each site, for running systems, we covered the vegetation assessment, so riparian plant assessment, identifying all the native and non-native species of all the way from 0 to 3 meters. We use sweep net to catch the flying aerial adults of Odonata. And in the water, we looked for their babies. So these are the babies of the dragonflies. These are the babies of the damselflies. And they are found in different types of habitats. Sometimes they prefer to live among and around rocks. Sometimes they are in the leaf litter. Sometimes they are in leaf litter twig kind of mixture. So they have micro-habitat variation. And this is like new knowledge for Fiji. We're trying to figure out who lives where and why. That's what the index is about. So in the end, after 4 years, we've developed a formula and we called it FOI, Fijian Wetland Odonatological Index. It is a novel biocultural and ecological combined practitioner-friendly tool to assess wetland integrity in small island systems and support nature-based solution for freshwater conservation. By aligning species-specific ecological requirements with indigenous ethnobiodiversity values, the tool offers a locally relevant socio-ecological approach to freshwater monitoring, conservation prioritization, and nature-based solution for sustaining ecological integrity of Fiji's native insular inland wetlands. So it is an ecosystem-level index, and it takes in the Pacific concise of ethnobiodiversity. And it has a lot of implications. So first one is to, so you see Wetlands Pacifica is something that I founded, an organization that basically works on wetland species across Fiji and the region. And we plan to introduce or implement a FAM, Fiji Aquatics Monitoring Program, for people, by people. So using 4 years as a citizen science tool, we'll be able to train locals in different provinces, including provincial conservation officers, to assess the status of their wetlands towards contribution to status of wetlands for Fiji. And in 5 years, we can contribute to status of environment report for Fiji. FOI used across the nation allows baseline for research for policy and decision making. Fiji still lacks wetland protection legislation. And without assessing the status of wetlands and species conservation value and inclusive of biocultural value, we cannot develop a proper legislation that suits Fijian lands. It is very useful for farmers to wherever they can understand to have a riparian buffer that allows for thriving of biodiversity and allows for breeding and conservation for endemic species, as well as assessing their water quality and having sustainably planned farming where they do not remove the buffer, knowing that it is a home and it's also an important habitat for amphibious species. 4E also allows Fiji to meet up its Ramsar site goals for inland wetlands. It becomes a community and provincial level tool for our practitioners. And at international arena, it supports SDG 14, which is the life below water. And at the bigger level, it supports the targets for post-2030 global biodiversity framework agenda, which has a very high, right now, which this year it has a very high value for indigenous knowledge as well as species of biocultural value across wetlands.
My apology, Bindiya, but we have to honor time for next speaker. And
Okay.
I just posted the Padlet here to share questions. Please reconnect. We have one question about why the focus is on land and sea, and what's the reason why rivers are forgotten. But I'm so sorry, we have to move to our next speaker, and I thank you so much for sharing your presentation.
Yeah, that was the last slide.
Yeah, thank you so much.